Hi guys, and in this lesson we will learn about divs, classes, and IDs in HTML. This is a div tag. We have an opening div tag and we have a closing div tag. Now div stands for division in HTML. The meaning is to divide your content. Let's say we have one section over here, then we have another section over here. So basically, but in HTML, there's also, which we're later going to get to, is semantics. It's more descriptive of the sections. But divs are used to kind of divide your content. All right. So let's call this, give it h1 tag and say divs. Let's say our first section, we're going to put like h2, say div1. Then we're going to give it a paragraph. Now, lorem, I'm just using Emmet to kind of generate text for me. So I got 20 words in there. Then we give another section created with h2. We're going to call this one div2. Keep it the same. Let's just get that one as well. Then we create a paragraph with lorem. So with Emmet, you can generate like dummy tags. So you just type lorem and the amount of words you need. For me, I'm just going to type 20 and then generate 20 words for us. All right. So let's see how this looks like in the browser. Let's open with live server. Now, as you can see, we've got our h1 and here's our h2 and h2 as well. But this is the first div and this is the second div. Now, what it does is actually put it inside the container. First part and the second part. Now let's move back to VS Code. Now as you can see, we got like a div holding this section in a container, and we got a second div holding this section in a container, dividing up this content and this content over here. That brings us to our next topic. What is classes and IDs? Let's give the first div a class. We just type in class of 1. And let's give the second div an ID of 2. Now you might be wondering, why would we want to use classes and IDs? Now, classes and IDs are used in CSS and JavaScript. Look at them as like hooks, something that you can latch onto in your style sheet, your CSS style sheet, or in your JavaScript. Now let's go into our CSS style. Open and closing tag there. Notation for class in CSS, you see you noted with a point, like a full stop, and we just put 1. That is indicating to CSS that this is a class. So it's looking in your document, in your body, for a class of 1. Let's say we want to make the background color, let's say aquamarine. And let's see how this looks like in the browser. Let's open with live server. Now, as you can see, it selected that div and gave that div a class of aquamarine. But there's more that we can do. Let's go back to style, VS Code. Let's add some padding to RAM. We're going to get to the units and the properties later when we get to CSS, but for now just bear with me. I'm just putting a border, 1 pixel, solid, so gray. Right, that's a very light gray. Alright, and you see the class notation with the full stop. And now we're going to select the ID is with the hash sign. So that hashtag that we used to. I think Twitter. Then the next one, we're going to put the 2. So hash2 for the IDs, indicating you want to select in that body, you want to select the div with the ID of 2. Now let's do that, and we change this one's background color, let's say 2. Light gray, and padding of 2 rem as well. Border, give it a border of 1 pixel, solid red. Alright, so the reason why I'm going so fast through them is because I'm going to explain them in later when we get to the CSS part of this course in more detail. But for now, just bear with me. So the ID is to give something, let's go to the ID. For ID is to give like a sense of identity to that div class, to let it know like, listen, this is this document ID, this element ID. I'm just thinking of IDs in terms of real IDs. The other one is class. Now do that div. Alright. So, and we can select it in CSS or in JavaScript. So let's open this quickly up in the browser and see what it looks like. Now, as you can see, we got that div, that section. It's been divided. It's got a background color and padding, and the same with the second div. Now you might be wondering, when do I use the class and when do I use an ID? Now let me explain that to you in VS Code. Now you can have different a lot of classes. Now let's say I can give my paragraph also a class of 1. Okay, but I cannot give something else an ID. An ID must be unique. You can only have one item or one element with an ID, with only one ID. So there cannot be another, let's say we create another div. I cannot give this div another ID, say ID of 2. I cannot do that. I can only give it another ID of 3, or I can give it the same class as 1, because an ID must be unique. It cannot be used more than once, but I can use more than one class. I can use a class more than once. So let's just copy this part over here to save us some time and just add 3 here. And let's open this in a browser. And as you can see, this one has got the same property as that one over there. How cool is that? Alright. So that brings us to an end of this video. If you guys have any questions or any comments, please leave them at the comment section. Or if this is a little bit confusing, don't worry about it. As we progress and as you get more used to using divs and IDs and classes, you will get used to when to use them and when not to use them. So if this looks overwhelming, don't be alarmed. You will, as you progress, it will become easier and easier to use. In the next part, we will discuss semantics in HTML. about, because now we use divs, but with semantics is very descriptive of the content that you're dividing into. So like for a div, it's not describing what content is in here. And the same with this div, it's just a div. No real description of the content. But with semantics, it kind of will give you a description. But that's a topic for the next video. And I just want to say thanks for watching, and give it a like if you liked it, and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.